Life science is unquestionably complex, and I challenge anyone to find another industry with more areas of risk. That really begs the question why anyone would want to lead from the eye of a tornado. And for me, the bottom line always starts and ends with patience. As a CFO, COO, you have to move from one meeting to the next. So it's imperative to drill down on the details in each of the disciplines. Leaders in pharmaceutical and life science companies need to be creatively pragmatic. It's what I like to call the triple threat. It's what you have, what you need, and what you want. Every piece of the pie moves another piece of the puzzle.
All right. Thanks for joining this episode. And I'm super excited to have this guest on today. So usually we get people from life sciences who are either on the science side, or either they're on the regulatory side, or either they're on the operation side. Well, guess what? The guest we have today has done tons of stuff. He started his career in finance, then moved into law, then had a couple of, operations and leadership type roles, has, managed, regulatory side of things. He's sort of done it all kind of person. And I really, when I saw his LinkedIn profile and his resume, I was like, how is this person doing all these things? Like, they're not even, closely related or connected, but he has the experience, he has the educational background, all the credentials to do it. So I wanted to bring him on today, ask him how he started his career, how did he get into all these opportunities, and what are the challenges? Because I can't think of, myself doing 5 different things within the life sciences ecosystem. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And if you are interested in learning more, or if you are maybe in a leadership role and you want to learn from him, this is a must-watch episode for you. So let's go right into it and have a chat with Tag. Welcome to the show, Tag.
Thanks for having me, Harsh.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the intro, you started your career in finance, then you moved into law, then you've had roles in leadership, strategy, operations, you name it. To start off, did you ever think that you were going to do all of this when you look at your career maybe 10, 20 years ago? Or what was the moment when you decided that you wanted to venture out into all these areas?
Sure. So the short answer is no. And I don't think anyone does. I never even contemplated being in the pharmaceutical industry. I thought I was going to be a lawyer since I was a little kid. So, but I am of the mindset that not everything that's complex must be complicated. And we know that life science is unquestionably complex. And I challenge anyone to find another industry with more areas of risk than life science. I mean, think of financing, development, scientific, regulatory, commercial risk, not to mention the cultural risk that you have with the teams that you build out. So that really begs the question why anyone would want to lead from the eye of a tornado. And for me, the bottom line always starts and ends with patience. They entrust us with their health and well-being. And I can't imagine a more chaotically rewarding way to do well by doing good. And it really started with, I'm going to start with where I was born and raised, and I'll jump forward quite a bit. I was born and raised in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, just outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is better known to everyone as the home of The Office. I'm the oldest of 4 boys, and I attended the University of Scranton, graduated with a dual BS MBA degree in accounting. After graduating, I found myself in Charlotte, North Carolina, pursuing a career in banking at Bank of America. While in Charlotte, I obtained my CPA license. As I mentioned, I knew I was always going to be going to law school. So I matriculated at Temple Law School in 2013. And to answer your question directly, it was during that time that I reported on the Forbes inaugural, I just had to look it up the other day. It was the first 30 under 30 convention at the Philadelphia Convention Center. And I had the distinct pleasure to speak with so many young entrepreneurs on behalf of Temple Law School. They wanted me to write up a piece about the 3-day event. And one young such entrepreneur had driven straight from Chicago to Philadelphia, having booked a hotel for a few days in his car. So the energy was electric. And it was really then that I realized that I wanted to combine my financial and legal background. I've always been passionate about helping people and have really been undaunted by challenges. So I leapt at the opportunity to join a small pharma company shortly after law school.
quick word for you. Here's something interesting that my team shared with me from the back end of our YouTube channel. 87.8% of the people who've watched any of our videos throughout the lifetime of the channel have not yet subscribed. If you're one of them, we would love to have you on board. Subscribing is free, literally costs you nothing, but it means the world to us. It helps us bring in more top tier industry leaders and experts, and also helps us improve the production quality of our episodes. So, if you watched any of our videos before, found something valuable, or learned more about our topic or our guest, could I please ask you for a small favor to go ahead and click the subscribe button below? Thank you, and I'll repay that gesture by making sure that everything we do here gets better and better with every new video uploaded to the channel. That is my word to you. We could not have done this without you, and I appreciate all your support. Thank you, and let's go back to the episode. Yeah, and not many people know this, right? But after this episode, if they try to dig more about you and your journey, I know you've had a chief financial officer role and a chief operating officer role for the same company, and that itself, when you think about it, just having one of those responsibilities, it's brings a lot of stress, brings a lot of accountability. You've had both. So if you were to give somebody a behind the scenes of what were the day-to-day challenges for you having both of those roles for that company, can you share some there?
Sure, happy to. And it's certainly it's not a party,
Yeah.
or if it was, it would be a chaotic one. But I think the key to managing a dual CFO COO role is detail, and I can't
Mm,
stress the word enough. There's a movie, Denzel Washington is in it. It's called The Little Things, wherein Denzel's character is obsessed with details, and
yeah.
it's what makes him quite remarkable in the movie. So as a CFO, COO, you have to move from, one meeting to the next. And you could be one moment you're with the clinical ops team. Next minute you're on an investor update call. Next call is a business development discussion. And then you might top it off with a regulatory affairs team call. So it's imperative to drill down on the details in each of the disciplines and understand how a communication from the FDA impacts, for example, your cash flow for the next 6 months. So it's really all comes down to detail and continuity of business coverage across the organization.
Yeah, and I don't know, I might be butchering this quote, but there is this quote that, little things become the big things, or the devil lies in the details and stuff like that. So I've heard multiple variations of that, and that's one thing that, most people miss is, and I've learned this as I grow in my career, is when you move into leadership roles, or when you're at a C level, you obviously have resources on your team. You have budgets, you have people on your team. You're not doing all the work to you're basically managing in that role, but you're basically getting paid to think, right? To think clearly from all angles, and that's where paying attention to details is very important. And this is not just in life sciences, even in sports, even in like other careers. When you are at that level where you are at the top of managing entire organization, even the tiniest details can help you make the right or wrong decision. So I'm glad that you stressing that. It sounds boring, nobody wants to hear it, but I love it.
Yeah, it can't be said enough, and your point's well taken. I mean, it comes down to the smallest details, and really just working with your teams to ensure that those small details are not overlooked.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And as you know, we have a lot of people who might be watching this show that are not in the life sciences industry, that don't really understand the unique challenges. So, in for somebody like you in your role, when you're dabbling with, financial management, strategy, leadership, operations, getting compliance with regulations, what is something unique to life sciences? What are some of the unique challenges to life sciences that maybe other industries don't have, other CFOs and chief operating officers don't have in other industries? Can you share some of that?
Sure. So thanks for the question. So, I mean, ironically, there's an insane amount of pressure for life sciences executives to perform when, at the end of the day, science controls the narrative. And of
Hmm.
course, you've got the challenges with FDA. Not every, tech companies don't necessarily have to answer to the FDA, or certainly don't. So, but it doesn't change what the investor wants, right? Investors
Right.
want high risk, high reward, and that certainly is true in the life sciences industry. And even the most educated investor about life sciences demands excellence, and I can appreciate that because I am an investor, and I do as well.
Yeah.
But when you're blending, corporate life science strategy and innovation, leaders need to be creatively pragmatic, right? Because there are certain things that you just can't change, but certainly with smaller, high growth startups, you need to be creative. And it's always what I like to call a triple threat. What do you have? What do you need? And what do you want?
Hmm.
And and so certainly you always have what you have, but the need and want can be two totally different beasts. And so I always encourage other leaders to really push their teams to inform the executive decision making, because your regulatory affairs team, your clinical design team, those are the folks that understand the ever-changing dynamics of the life science industry, and allowing them, I shouldn't say allowing, I should say supporting their positioning as you carry out corporate goals and objectives is key to success in the life sciences industry.
Yeah, and you broke it down really simply there, because what you said what you have, what you want, and what you need, right? Is that correct? Is that the
That's
three?
correct.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. And to me, I'm thinking it's not even just for uh, an organization. It could also be for a person. If you want to go somewhere in your career, it's a great way compass to basically analyze where are you in your career. What do you want? What do you need, right? And sometimes we want bunch of things that really don't uh, you know maybe we're not thinking long term. In that short term we want it, but the more we think about it, maybe that's not what we want. So it's really good that you mentioned that that's the lens to look at, because that simplifies a lot of the things for people in life sciences who are in these executive roles.
Absolutely. And there's actually, I'll share this with you. Anecdotally, I spoke with the CEO of Inzamed at one
Mm,
point in time, and he had given me some really sage advice. And he said, "Don't always look for the home run. You
right.
can get to home base by hitting a single or a double." And I think that
Yep.
that's also critical, not only in your in life sciences, but also in your career development.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this I've heard the same analogy for, in like compared to football. It's like you don't have to throw a touchdown on every play, right? You just have to get the 10 yards, get the first down, and get closer to the end zone. Yes, you can
That's right.
throw it, but there's also a risk doing that, right? So yeah, I've heard that one before. I know you talked about tech. So this is something that I've heard a lot of people in life sciences and pharma, uh not I don't want to say complaining, but just thinking of it like they have an unfair, like tech tech industry has an unfair advantage where they don't have a lot of regulation unless there is a spotlight on a particular topic. So a lot of the big tech companies had to answer to regulators once AI became, mainstream. And then we know OpenAI and all the other tech companies had to basically come and show how they built these models and whatnot. But up until then, like nobody really is looking there, right? Unless they start going into digital health and digital therapeutics, then maybe FDA is going to show up at their door. But I've heard life sciences always say that it's really hard to innovate because literally everything has to be explained or demonstrated to the regulators, and it's slowing down innovation. Uh, so, what is your take on that? Do you think the executives in life sciences are correct that there's too much regulation and it's slowing down? And if they can't change that, if they can't change what the FDA expectations are, how do they manage the fine line between uh, meeting the regulations and also like pushing the envelope on the innovation side?
Yeah, I mean, look, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
it is something that is just It's inherent in the life sciences industry that there's amazing amounts of regulation, and regulation can be a great thing. I mean, take cryptocurrency for an example. Bringing regulation to that industry is key to its
Yeah.
longevity. I think that it's less to me about how much regulation and more about informed decision making based upon having the right conversation with the regulators, and planning for success and really designing clinical trials that will meet the needs and requests. Hopefully, they're clear, right, from the
Yeah.
FDA. Is key to ensuring that you're really driving market aligned planning for successful approval and commercialization. So I really think it has to do more with, again, this is back to the details. When you're in the meetings, being able to ask the right questions, pick up on certain things that the regulators are saying, and make sure you're driving that back into the organization, because ostensibly, in my mind, the FDA is an extension of every single life sciences team out there. So I look at it more as an extension rather than inhibiting our abilities to succeed and grow.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you there. Uh, I want to switch gears and move from innovation and regulation to specifically on finance and maybe go a little bit deeper there. I haven't really interacted with a lot of people who are executives in finance roles. So I don't, to me, that's like a really a gray area. I don't really understand how any of that works. But since you are here and you've had positions in managing finances within life sciences, can you share what are some of the financial hurdles that you have faced in your past roles that you've discussed with the executive team, specifically within life sciences, and how did you overcome those in a CFO role?
Sure, it's I don't care what anyone says. Cash is always a pain point,
Yep.
and I mean I think that's true across every industry, every person. It's a constant issue, and one thing you hear a lot about these massive raises, right? For instance, an example is, and I'm just making this up. You get a $250 million check, and the champagne is certainly well deserved, and there's a
Mm,
moment of celebration, but prudent leaders need to understand that this cash is going into the pharma fire, is what I like to call it. And what do I
yeah.
mean by pharma fire? I mean, how much time does the company have to hit critical value inflection points before the campfire goes cold? The answer is almost not a lot. And so, after an initial raise, you have to be thinking, when's the next raise? And,
Yeah.
and and what do we need to ensure that our valuation increases at the time that we have to go back out to look for more capital, or there's a certain deal to be done. I think all too often capital gets deployed on, quite frankly, nonsense.
Mm,
It's easy to do when you've got. I don't think I'll speak for myself. Not having $250 million, I suppose, from an executive standpoint, it's probably easier to spend when you eventually you have it, and of course it's something it's your capital for the company. But you need proper risk adjusted modeling, really detailed clinical trial design with the appropriate timelines. I mean, that's key, and they always shift. And you need really robust and honest team discussions, sometimes tough ones. I mean, I'm a big fan of going into the discussions and asking, what are we doing wrong? Where are we failing?
mm,
Where's the downstream and around the corner? What issues are we going to face? Because at the end, if you spend the money, truly spend it in a way that it's always driving value, then in principle, dollars should result in good data or great data,
yeah.
assuming science cooperates, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Going back to, like you said, in life sciences, science dictates the narrative. You can throw as much money as you want at the solution or at the clinical trial or whatever it is, but ultimately, if the data isn't positive, we've seen many companies fall overnight just because of that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and talking about like talking about investing and raising capital, so that's also another topic that many people might be curious to know more about. Like what is one thing that makes raising capital for life science companies more difficult or unique than other industries? I'm sure you've been involved in a lot of deals. Can you share some examples or something that might help people or companies be aware of if they're trying to raise capital now or in 2025?
Sure. I mean, in this current environment and for the past few years, it's been tough. There's been a
Yeah.
dearth of IPOs. And look, good investors understand the high risk, high reward trade offs in life sciences, or they certainly should. I think that the challenges for leaders this space is to understand before they're in front of investors how they're looking at structuring financing deals. How are you going to bring in capital to operationalize the company?
Hmm.
When to approach investors? There's a time component to this. What the appropriate type of investor profile is, given the value proposition. There's different narratives out there that will fit one investor profile versus another, and certainly your time is best spent ascertaining which is the right investor to target. And lastly, you need to understand where those pools of capital reside and why those identified investor profiles should pay attention to your story.
Yeah.
It's funny, you'll hear 1,000 no's for every yes, but
Hmm.
leaders still need to be able to say no to the yes. And what do I mean by that? And it's hard. It sounds counterintuitive, but if and recall I termed the triple threat: what you
Yes.
want, what you need, and what you have. Great leaders are empowered to vet their investors, just as the investors have to vet the opportunities. And
Hmm.
so you don't need to be out there and you don't want to be desperate. You want to understand what types of investors you're bringing in and how they've supported companies in the past, because just like they have to, they're on the roller coaster with you. You're on the roller coaster with them, and you want an investor that's going to support you and that understands the particular indications or drugs that you're developing very well, because that's a huge that having that support system is a huge help as you're moving along, because without question, once you start, you will encounter so many different problems that you never thought you were going to encounter, and having your base of investors there to help you through those tough moments is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and I have to admit that in the I think I've had one other person on this podcast, maybe 20 or so episodes before this, and he's into the life sciences investing side. He has his own, wealth management firm, whatever you want to call it, investment firm, and he also mentioned similar things. He's like, he goes out with executives at biotech companies or his portfolio of companies, and he's always basically asking them, hey, what are the three problems you're trying to solve in this quarter? Like, what are your three burning problems, and how can I help you? Like, are you trying to hire somebody? Are you trying to raise money? Are you trying to navigate maybe a regulatory uh, topic with the agency? Like, he basically wants to know that, and if he can't help it, he wants to like connect the executive to like five other people and say, hey, go talk to John, go talk to Katie, or go talk to so and so. I know them. And he's basically going to every conversation with the mindset of how I can help, right? So, like you said, as a pharma company or a biotech company executive, you want those kind of investors on your side who are coming to the table with like, hey, how can I help you? Because we both have skin in the game, right?
Absolutely. And as I said, FDA is an extension of the team. Your investor pool is an extension of the team. And the investors that ask where your pain points are, and if I can help, or I've got someone that would be interested in this opportunity that could help, those are the best kind of investors.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, I had I had so many questions for this, like about your law background, and we're like not even halfway done. But I do want to ask you, uh, your law background, studying healthcare law, doing all of that. How do you? I'm guessing you are. A lot of companies and a lot of people reach out to you to get that expertise because technically for selfish reasons, they might think you, instead of hiring three people, they should just hire you because you can do basically three people's think like three different people. But how do you, when you are in these discussions, when do you go lean into your law knowledge? When do you lean into your finance knowledge? Do you have like a framework of how you operate, or you're basically taking it like role by role and whatever the company that you're working with needs.
Yes, I mean it certainly is role by role, but
Yeah.
I mean one thing I didn't realize in law school is that every action I take as a leader in life sciences is within the context of regulatory and legal compliance. Doesn't
Mm,
matter whether you're putting together an investment deck, doesn't matter whether you're involved in clinical trial design, or obviously talking with investors. Corporate strategy is not a point of sale transaction. And I think
mm,
that's a mistake that I've certainly seen the mistake made. It's one that I would prefer to avoid. It's rather than a point of sale transaction. Every decision and action taken has downstream effects, and the identification of legal issues, and they permeate the entire organization. So you always have to have that hat on. And I'm fortunate enough to have it because it's a great help. But the identification of the legal issues and the risk mitigation strategies to address them are really critical to what investors want: flawless execution on the business's goals and objectives. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to keep the legal hat on as you're involved in any area of the business, because there are always legal issues in every area of the business. And that is one of the reasons why I think the discussions that I have with my current clients, and when I'm involved with companies, they like to have me in the room, because there's certain things that you don't know what you don't know.
yeah. 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 If there are any other CFOs, CEOs, or C-level executives listening to this episode and nodding their head as to everything that you've shared, or reflecting on what they've been through in their journey, or maybe there are other people who are aspiring to be CFOs and C-level executives in the coming few years, what do you think is one massive, non-negotiable leadership quality that C-level executives in life sciences need to have, especially with all the advancements in technology? You talked about cryptocurrency, there's blockchain, there's AI, there's machine learning. I mean, on the technology side, we're going to see some huge changes in how we do things in the next 10 years. So what's your one non-negotiable leadership quality that a C-level must have?
You've got to be relentless. I mean,
Mm,
it's maybe resilience, relentless resilience. I mean, it's really tough, because you get so many, there's so many things that can go wrong, and there's so many things that don't go according to plan. But that's why you have to think creatively pragmatic, uh, to ensure that you're still pushing the business along and you're not getting down. But you've got another answer. There's another play. I mean, that quite frankly, that's why people want to hire CFOs or COOs or a combination of the both, because they're able to think their way out of problems,
yeah.
and constantly solving problems. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's really just I would say that the relentless resilience is a critical component, perhaps top trait that I look for with various team members that I bring on.
Great. And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you've enjoyed learning about tag and all these different topics that we haven't discussed in the past, or with this type of guest, please, please, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow us on Apple and Spotify platforms. The more subscribers and followers we get, the more we can bring other exciting guests and exciting topics to the show. So you do your part, and I'll make sure that we bring more exciting guests in life sciences with a wide range of background and skills, just like Tag. So Tag, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Before we drop off, where can people connect with you, learn more about you, learn what you're up to?
Sure, I'm always active on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to get me, and be happy to field any additional questions, advice, or I'm always a student, always learning. So if anyone has any ideas or thoughts that they'd like to run by me, I'd be thrilled to. I'd be welcome. I very much welcome them.
Yeah, and thanks again for coming and being so open and sharing everything that you've learned and all your experience. Before I hit the stop button on my screen here, what's one takeaway that you want people to remember from this episode?
I think the one thing that I continue to think about is I just recently got married, and everybody gives you a lot of advice around that time,
Yeah.
and I think it's important to actually implement the advice that we're given. And seriously, very few of us ever do. So if there's one person out there that would decide to take this advice to the bank, I would say really, continue to be relentlessly curious and unabashedly pursue excellence.
Yeah.
That's my advice for anybody.
Yeah, that's gold. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening to this one. I will see you in the next. Thanks.
Thank you, Harsh.